I'm going to walk you through the installation of the J&L oil separator for your 2.7 liter Silverado and Sierra. Included in the J&L kit is a fully assembled oil separator, a mounting bracket, and 2 mounting screws. The tools you're going to need for installation is a 7mm socket, an 8mm socket, a 10mm socket, a 13mm socket, an assortment of extensions including 2 long ones if you have them, ratchet, a clip puller tool, an assortment of picks. You'll need some long ones like this, Phillips head screwdriver, some good lights, maybe a headlamp, light. This installation is involved. I would recommend you assess your mechanical ability before starting. You do have to disassemble quite a few things. It's all nuts and bolts, and it is a very tight area. It's going to require some patience to remove the factory PCV line. Once you get the factory line off, it's very easy. Please watch the full video before attempting installation. Our first step, we need to remove our engine cover. There's 2 10mm bolts here. Remove those. Then you're going to lift up on the cover and pull forward. To remove our factory airbox, we'll need to loosen up the clamp here, 7mm. Just loosen that up. We'll need to disconnect the factory PCV line, breather line from the airbox here. You see this gray button here. You're going to press the button from the bottom and pull it off. You'll see 10mm nut there, 10mm nut there, so 1 and 2. On the box itself, you'll find a few harnesses that have retainment pins that are pushed into the box. They're just like step clips. You're just going to pull them up or use your clip puller tool. There should be 4 harnesses total. This one here too. There's one there, and then lastly there. This evap hose you'll disconnect. It's going to disconnect the same way that PCV line disconnected. There's a button. The button's on this side. No, actually no, it's more towards the passenger side, so you see it there. You press that in and pull off the connection like that. And then your electrical connection here, pull out the little gray tab, squeeze it, and unplug it. Lastly, at the turbo, you can see that clamp. See if I can get that to focus. That's your hole to get down to your clamp on your turbo. That's also 7mm. You'll use your long extensions. Pull our airbox off of here. Lift it off of the studs. Don't lose your inserts. And then you're going to pull it off of your turbo. Make sure, use care in not breaking this evap solenoid. Pull it off the turbo. It's going to pull right out of the way. But yeah, just make sure you use care with this. You don't want to break that. Inside of it, you'll notice all that oil and the need for the catch can. Now, before starting to remove this line, I would actually recommend that you remove this bracket here on the valve cover. There's a 10mm bolt here. and a 10mm bolt back here that just holds this little black bracket on. We're going to loosen that up and just slide that out of the way, and that's going to allow our line to push up and clear that bracket. So it's very easy to do. You don't even need to remove the nuts all the way. The bracket is slotted. So let's do that first. So see, that slides right out of there, and that'll give us some give to get this line off. And you can see little teeth here. You can see there's 3 on each side. So like I said, sometimes if you just pop 2 of them to grab on that edge, it'll come off. And this rotates too. It's got some give to it. You know, tamper proof. Now with these tamper-proof connections, if you didn't care about saving your factory line, or you're willing to buy another one, which this line is, I haven't priced it from GM, but if I had to guess, it's probably going to be 30 or 40 bucks. You could cut this bar here with a pair of dikes, just clip it, and you should be able to wiggle it right off. You know, if you didn't want to fight that one in the back. You can, you know, also break some of those teeth in there if you can get a blade in there or a pair of dikes, something thin that could cut. It's just plastic, but if you did break it, it should pull off, and you won't have to fight it nearly as much as I did. All right, so here's our line. You can see our little retainment teeth in there. Typically, you got to pop 2 or 3 of them above the ridge, and then you can wiggle the line off. This one's easier to do than the one on the back of the valve cover due to its location. So usually pretty easy to get a tooth popped. There we go. So that all has to do with the fact that you can pull directly up on this line versus fighting that one in the back. I'll be honest, I've done a few of these, not only on the Silverado, but a few other GM vehicles, and some are just a lot easier than others. So just be patient, it'll come. If you don't care about breaking it, it's way, way easier. So we're gonna need to take this ignition coil pack out for the 4-cylinder. There's 2 8mm bolts that hold it down. We're also gonna have to loosen up this plastic bracket that holds on the engine cover. There are 2 10mm nuts on each side of it that are rather accessible with a 1/4-inch drive and a short extension. We're gonna remove the nuts completely on the driver's side. Be sure not to drop them. And then on the passenger side, you'll see this long stud here. We're just gonna loosen that nut up to the top of the stud, but not enough for it to fall off. And then we're gonna loosen up the one that's back behind the bracket. You can feel back there. That's on a short stud. Loosen that up enough, but not enough to remove it, but just to the very top of the stud. Wiggle it, make sure it won't fall off. And then that will allow us to lift this bracket up and pivot it out of the way. But it's easier just to leave a couple of nuts on there to keep it in place. This is in a very tight area, so I'm just going to have the camera running in the background. And I'm just using care to make sure I don't loosen these nuts all the way on this passenger side because I don't want them to fall off. On the driver's side, I will be removing them completely. If you do end up dropping them, those are an M6 by 1.0 nut. Very easy to find replacements. So that should allow us to lift this bracket up and out of the way, which will allow us to get that coil pack out. And we should be able to slide this coil pack out without having to unplug it, because the connection is a little bit of a pain. All right, slide that out of the way, and now we can see our fitting. Right there. See our little tamper-proof teeth. So now we'll work with our pick tool to get that removed. All right, it's off. That took me the better part of 10 minutes with a few breaks in between. It's in a very tight location. You got to be patient. If you're not afraid to break it, you can just break this fitting. You can cut the little tabs on it, pair of dikes, and it'll probably come right off. We try to make things reversible, so I didn't want to do that to this truck. And we're going to get our line the rest of the way out of here. It's around a bunch of stuff in the back. And with any luck, we'll never have to put that back in the truck. So, just to show you, you can see all the gunk and nastiness in that line that's going through your turbo and into your intercooler and to your motor. I'm going to prep our oil separator for installation. You're going to take your mounting bracket and your oil separator. You're going to align the two logos and then fasten the bracket to the oil separator with the supplied screws. Before installing the J&L connections, put a little oil on your fingers and just lubricate those O-rings. You could also use grease, and that will help this fitting slide right onto this factory connections with very little effort. Now the oil separator assembly is going to mount off of your battery bracket. There's a 13mm bolt. You're going to go ahead and remove that. Grab the oil separator and slide it into place. It's going to mount on top of the bracket. So push the assembly down to start your bolt, and we'll snug that up for now. So I'm not going to tighten it all the way yet. We're going to go and make our connections. Now these connections work much easier than your factory connection just removed. It's the same style fitting, but it's got a push button release, so it'll be very easy to remove if you ever need to. Also, our fittings are double O-ring versus the factory have the single O-ring on these. So you're going to push this back to the back of the motor, and these fittings just push right on to connect. And also the fittings adjust, so they'll spin. So adjust it as you need it. That's on. And then at the turbo, the straight fitting is going to go straight down. And plug in there. And the only thing you want to check for clearance, you want to check for clearance from this air conditioning line to your hose here, and then check your clearance in the back. This hose may touch on this fabric in the back. You just don't want it to hit hard, so if you need to pivot it more forward, you can. But find a happy place for it, and then tighten your bolt. Now it's time for some reassembly. So first thing, I'm going to put our little bracket back here in place. So we need to slide our ignition coil back into place. So feed the boot back into the hole. And start your bolts by hand. Now we need to refasten that back bracket. We have the two that we completely removed on the driver's side. Start those. We're going to work on getting our air box back in. Paying careful attention to this solenoid here. Going to slide it into place. Aligning our two studs up front. Off of the valve cover. And then let's step up here and see what we're looking like. We got to get the inlet down onto the turbo. Just there we go. And we're going to tighten up that turbo hose first. All right, I just want to reach down there and make sure that boot is all the way around. There it is. So now we just need to plug our harnesses back in to the retainment pins. Should be one more over here. And now we need to plug in our evap solenoid. Which will push right into place. Push the security tab forward. Let's grab our evap hose and get that into place. Snaps right in. And then our two 10mm nuts that secure it to the valve cover. Last, we're going to reinstall our engine cover. Back of your cover has these two C-shaped retainments. It's going to go onto that black bracket that we loosened earlier. So slide that back into place. And then they're going to sit down and your bolts are going to go into these inserts. So grab your bolt. Okay, if you made it this far, congratulations. You have your oil separator installed. Now your average collection rate on most oil separator applications is about 1 ounce of oil every 1,000 miles. Your default reservoir on your J&L holds 3 ounces. So what we recommend you do is check it 1,000 after installation. That'll give you a good idea how frequently you need to check it. This kit is compatible with our extension that doubles the capacity. So if your truck's a daily driver and you want to have more capacity to make it between oil changes without having to check this thing, we do recommend the extension. If you live in a colder climate in the winter months, you'll get more condensation buildup in the can, just from the temperature difference of the oil separator itself versus the hot air that's entering it. So you want to check it more frequently in the winter if you live in a cold climate. We appreciate you watching. If you have any questions, please reach out. We'll see you on the next one.